I mean, it was good and
Jesus.
everything, but everybody has to
Well,
be on good behavior in there. And I mean, if I'm gonna listen to Jack, I want to hear the gloves are off, Jack.
sorry. That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I really liked when you were like, so basically what you're saying is when you say someone lost the debate, it's basically we disagree with your position, so you have in fact lost.
Oh, he was dead to rights on that one. Jack that one hard. I
And
mean,
he spent like 20 minutes going, well, no, not necessarily, not technically, not actually. Yeah.
and then he
I
tried
don't
to
like
say
what you
that he
said, so
never
you lose.
said
I mean,
something that
all it boiled down to is either if you're either you have a consistent position, right, or it just boils down to the people that initially didn't agree with you don't agree with you, and that's
Yeah.
all their argument was.
That's
Yeah, it was a great dismantling, right? It was really good. I really enjoyed it, but I don't want to put a gun in my mouth at the end of it. So maybe if you'd gone like 4 minutes farther, I would be here to speak and save half the room this nonsense that I'm spouting now.
You lost the debate. What they really mean is, they weren't persuaded because.
well. Funny thing is, I didn't. This was like a mistake that I didn't sort of realize that I should have said this until afterwards. But they were saying that if they could get somebody to show that they could justify the Holocaust, right, that they would lose the debate because everybody would recoil from anybody who had a position like that, right? But they seem to think that I said something like that, right? Whereas I didn't say anything about, endorsing the Holocaust, right? I said all I endorsed was that it was okay to eat meat, which is like the vast majority of mankind, right?
Well,
feels that they. So how could that be embarrassing? Like they made it sound like that I ended up defending like an embarrassing position, but my position was the position that almost everybody has, that it's okay to eat meat. Well, somewhat okay anyway, but it's not okay to like kill people in order to eat them, right?
yeah.
And so what's embarrassing about that? I mean,
I like the other part that I really liked. The other part that I really liked, and it's funny because so they've changed my name in there to what did they change it to? Something like hunts
Faggot.
down innocent. I remember what they've changed it to. They've changed it to preys on innocent cement trucks. And the reason they changed it to preys on innocent cement trucks is because I made the statement that humans are apex predators and our brains are weapons, and because we have the ability to sharpen sticks, there's no animal that we can't take down.
But wait, Jack, are you saying it's never okay to kill and eat a human?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's like a, there's in general the reason in general.
Yeah, in general, sure.
Yeah.
So Danny's done a pretty good job of smacking them around too. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to coach him more.
Yeah,
Danny,
you did pretty good, man. I mean, I was amazed.
Yeah,
I was impressed.
Well,
I never
so
seen
Danny
like
came in there and was debating. Who were you debating, Danny? You were debating.
They debated
unethical.
Avy.
Well, he was also debating some guy named Unethical Vegan, I think.
Oh, I forget. They changed their name. So.
Yeah, I think you were debating Unethical Vegan, and you were like, you got him to admit that he's a moral anti-realist, and then you asked him why is he making claims about which is good or bad. Yeah, and the guy just started sputtering, that was interesting.
I'm gonna coach Danny some more on how to. I don't really want to deal with it if I can avoid it, but I'd like to see Danny and a couple other people.
So Jack, when are you going to exchange with John John?
Oh fuck! I just got in here.
Holy shit, man! Oh,
Not like
there you
this.
are.
If he exchanged with
Not-
John,
not-
that would give John legitimacy. So obviously you can't do that.
Don't listen to that butthurt theist. Listen, you guys have to understand. Shamos will never forgive me, and I grant him a lot of sympathy here. I feel bad. I shouldn't have did it. But he will never forgive me for wrecking his imaginary sky daddy right before he went to jail for a month.
Jack, let me ask you a question real quick. Since I was asked to come in here and talk
I'm
about
still waiting to
Christian.
see these penises.
So Darth makes the claim that everyone knows God. It's a universal claim that everyone knows God, but in their unrighteous state, they reject the knowledge of Him. So that's the claim that Darth makes. And so Darth would make the claim that the only way that you can actually have knowledge would be to accept Christ and be saved. Now, if someone were to say, okay, prove to me that you are saved, how in the world would you go about proving that you are in fact saved in an objective way? I don't think you can do it. I think the only thing you can do is, I think the only way you could do it is just to say, I know it in my heart, because the only person that can truly know if they're saved is themselves, because it's internal, right? It's a heart action. So if you can't prove that you are objectively saved, then someone who says, well, I just don't believe you're saved, so you are being unrighteous, and so therefore you don't have knowledge of God. I don't see how you would get out of that if you were to make that claim.
Well, it sounded like Vic. Vic, did you have some idea about that?
Well, I mean, if I'm saved as a proposition, then it seems like you can know it, right? So somebody else can know that you're saved as long as it's a proposition. It could be true or false.
Right, you're saying that you can know you're saved, and I agree that you can subjectively know you're saved. But how would
reasonable
you
Christian is saved as a proposition? And it seems like you could know whether it's true or false.
But how would you justify that the reasonable Christian is saved objectively?
Can you know all the proposition? Does that entail that you can know that it's true or false? I mean, it entails that it is true or false, but does it entail that you can know that it's true or false?
Well, yeah, presumably the proposition has truth conditions that you can access. Otherwise, it doesn't really have any meaning.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I
that's my
mean-
point. I don't think it does have any meaning out of the subjective claim.
Well, if you don't think it's a proposition, that's something different. If you just don't think it means anything, then sure, you can't know it.
Right, because so for me, right, I've always taken the position that even if you reject God, you still have the ability to have knowledge. But someone like Darth would reject that. So my position has always been that because you're created in the image of God, that you are born with the ability to know certain things, because being created in the image of God doesn't mean a physical thing. It means a spiritual thing. So just because you say God doesn't exist doesn't preclude you from having access to the things that God gave you upon birth. Like, denying God doesn't negate those things. So to say that people can only have knowledge outside of accepting God seems contradictory to the created nature of humans under a God worldview.
It could just mean that, like, I don't know, God exists as a conceptually necessary belief.
You mean that it's logically impossible for God not to exist?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, according to the announcements, your debate with the Ask Yourself has been uploaded, and it's titled "Debating NTT and Moral Particularism with Angstrike," and the description is "Stabbing a baby's eye out and fucking the socket is ethical if doing so is your particular value. Winky face."
Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what Jack said. He actually smashed Jack. Jack actually fucked around and already acknowledged that they have a valid argument. He just like as far as all of you Carnists are concerned, you lost then and there.
Easy
But
ways
Jack
to
went
make
even
valid
further, right?
anti-vegan argument.
Don't overtalk me, faggot. But Jack went even further and said some dumb shit. And Ask Yourself actually got him to acknowledge this more than once. And that's exactly what he put in the description. He asked Jack straight up if he thought that waking up tomorrow and stabbing a kid's eye out and fucking in the eye socket, he said, Jack, would that be ethical? And Jack said twice, yes, it would be ethical.
Wait,
So, like,
John, I have a
all
question.
of them stopped taking Jack
John,
serious at that point. And
Oh,
it's no
but wait.
surprise he
John,
put that
I have a question.
Jack, no, maybe it's not
John.
it's not logically impossible, but it could be a normal constitutive agency that you have to believe that God exists.
Oh, I see. Okay.
These people are
John, I
stuck
have a
between
question.
relativism.
Is this about John? Is this a valid argument? Just from Florida, all Floridans are idiots.
You don't get it,
therefore John
Danny.
is an idiot. Is that
You
valid?
don't understand. Whenever it comes to the vegan
Say it
argument,
again, Danny. What'd you say?
whenever it comes to the vegan argument, it's
Floridians are,
strictly shut up,
If I
faggot.
say-
what?
Floridians are more
Shut up, faggot.
con-
Wait, one
Wait,
second.
Wait, can someone mute John
Wait,
John
wait,
for a
let me-
second?
let me
What'd you say,
finish.
Danny?
Fuck you.
What'd
If
you
I
say?
said, look, I don't actually think this, but if I say John, that John John's from Florida, all people from Florida are idiots. Therefore, John is an idiot. Is
Yes.
that valid?
Yes, that's valid.
You don't understand.
Right. No, but I'm asking John.
I tried to keep you from.
I'm
doing
asking
this
John,
stuff.
right? No. Wait, 1 second.
I don't think John would
It's
know
not
that answer.
about. I don't actually. Right. But the idea is that you're saying it was a detriment to Jack that he admitted that that they had a valid argument, right? But I just presented a valid argument.
Yes, I'll explain why,
Right.
dumbass.
But
finish first, since
Wait,
you
I mean, I
insist.
don't-
You insist.
yeah. The idea is that just because you have a valid argument doesn't mean you have a sound argument, right? You can reject one of the premises.
Yeah,
as being
that's just
true.
trivially true.
All validity.
That's not interesting.
No, but you see, what?
Is there a
well, then
point
I'm
in
just-
this
well,
somewhere?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, because you
Yeah,
said that.
exactly. Is there a
Jack
point
admitted
here somewhere?
Wait, you said. Let me finish. You're saying that Jack admitted that they had a valid argument, as if to say that was meaningful or
Yeah,
a
Danny, your
big
point is
law
obvious.
subject.
I said that as far as all of these carnists are concerned, the moment Jack acknowledged it's a valid argument, they all lost, right?
Why?
Why?
Well,
Just
then
because
you're an
something's
idiot
valid
because
doesn't
you
mean
acknowledge
it's just because
that
something is
Danny's
valid
argument
doesn't
This
mean it's
is
sound.
what I like to call cognitive dissonance that you guys are experiencing.
Then you're an idiot
Wait a
because you
second.
admitted that
Wait.
Danny's argument is sound.
John, can I ask
yeah.
John, quick
By your
question.
logic.
John, what's the difference between
But like, you guys have to shut up so I can explain to Danny why this is important.
John? Explain to us the difference between a valid
I
argument
will
and
after I get done explaining to Danny what I was going to interrupt him
a
for.
sound argument.
Yeah, but anyway. So Danny, the reason why Jack fucked up is because the vegans are obviously advocating for pragmatism here. In other words, you can't talk to them outside of the framework of practicality and a certain set of desires and tendencies, right? Like, in other words, you can't defeat the vegans by saying Martians think that eating meat is okay. Like, you can't say some dumb shit like that. But whenever people like Jack divorce pragmatism the way he is by appealing to sound argumentation, it's irrelevant and it's worthless. I think Jack is smart enough to know what he's doing. I think he was being intellectually dishonest, to be honest. I call it out. But in other words, long story short, whenever we're talking about well-being, right, the well-being of conscious creatures, whenever we're talking about morality and ethics, don't step outside of the framework of pragmatism by trying to say that your argument needs to be sound. That is absolutely stupid in the framework of pragmatism. So in other words, valid arguments are what we're working with in the framework of pragmatism, and Jack knows this. So whenever he acknowledged that it's a valid argument, he literally granted the vegans everything that they're trying to say. And none of you fucking morons can pick up on this, right?
No, I don't think that follows.
Jesus. I mean, you guys will learn eventually, hopefully.
John's just like,
You're saying pragmatists can arguments that aren't sound?
I'm asking you, listen, do you think that we could talk about morality and ethics outside of practicality?
Did you say that
Of
pragmatists can
course
accept
not.
arguments which aren't
That's
sound?
the answer.
Yeah, if it's
Oh,
You think
pragmatic for
this
them to
shit
do
is funny,
so.
Jack?
John,
is-
John, do you recall what I said to ask yourself when he asked me that question about if I woke up in the morning and I decided that the Holocaust was a good thing, that would be justified, or whatever that question was? Do you recall what I asked him in response?
Do I recall what you said to him?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said it was irrelevant.
No, what I said was, I asked him the question, if he woke up the next morning and decided that he had different principles, and that his principle was that the Holocaust was a good thing, would it be justified on that basis?
Yeah, I said in the chat that you're just trying to appeal to relativism.
Oh.
He
That's
also
all you're
said
doing, Jack.
he also said no to that, which is like straightforwardly irrational.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really
Yeah, he said
understand.
no. Something about his views today are this. His principles go against that, or something, which is like kind of to beg the question of what it means to wake up the next day with different views. But I don't know. The guy's kind of
Exactly.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's like when
Jack,
someone asks
what exactly was the
when
thing
someone-
that you and Ask Yourself were disagreeing about? He kept trying to explain to you that they're not the same thing, and you kept
It's
saying,
like
"Well, they're the
it's
same
like
thing."
the same it's like the same things when people like don't understand a hypothetical or like the reasons for a hypothetical. You're just like, oh, what if you missed school yesterday? Well, that didn't happen. It's that kind of stupid fucking idiotic response.
What if you were a cow?
Yeah, coming from a sophist like you, Jack, Josh, that's real rich.
If you were identical to a cow.
Hold on a sec, chum. John. Real quick, don't hesitate to answer. Just tell me what sophistry is.
You got to wait your turn, buddy.
He's hesitating to answer.
Get wrecked.
All right, so Jack, here's the question: is there a difference between moral relativism and moral particularism?
Yes.
Why couldn't you understand that when Ask Yourself was telling you it?
What are you talking about?
I thought that's what Ask Yourself kept explaining to you.
He wasn't
That it's not completely relativistic.
Is the idea
a
between
difference.
relativism and particularism kind of the idea that relativism is going to be relative to something or some context or something? And I mean, but isn't particularism just the idea that it's like relative to a context or relative to a situation? I mean, or is that like an improper way to speak of it?
Well, some people talk about it that way, but I think you could just understand it as the idea that there isn't actually if you take the moral facts, right, that if you take the moral propositions that are true, they aren't generalizable, right, they can't be subsumed under a set of generalizations, right, that they fit into. Why is that redundant? They are just individual facts, right? There is some principle that they conform to.
You're roboting a bit, Jack.
I was
So I
roboting?
guess what he's saying is like
I can
the
understand a bit, but
relativist
yeah.
is precluded from having principles and using generalizations in the way that he reasons relatively or subjectively, but the particularist isn't committed to
You got
that
that
at all.
backwards. You got that backwards. The particularist doesn't accept that there are general moral principles. Relativism just means that moral truths are going to be relative to, like, I don't know, certain norms, like cultural
No, I
norms
said
or
that the
example
relativist
norms.
wasn't precluded from using principles.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you are orthogonal, right?
The particularist isn't committed to that, or his view actually is the opposition of that.
Yeah, you got it.
That's a particularist. You could be a realist. That's a particularist. You could be a relativist. That's a generalist. Or you could be a realist. That's a generalist. I mean, it might be a case where each
Contrary of particularism, that I mean, you guys were universalism, But I mean, I always was under the impression that like universalism and relativism were the contraries. Like, is particularism like a niche between those subheadings, or how? What's the best way to
I think
conceptualize the relation?
Philip told me that the term in literature that particularism is contrasted to is generalism, so I should have used that term.
Mm-hmm.
But I think,
Okay.
but I don't know what they usually you hear relativism versus realism, but that seems like a bad nomenclature. It seems like it should be relativism versus absolutism or something like that.
Man, Jack, I just wanted to remind you, you have no defeater against the vegans. Just wanted to remind you that first of all. But Jordan Peterson's daughter, her top lip is really sexy. I don't think she's that great looking at all. I think she's overhyped. Everybody thinks she's so hot. But her top lip, it looks like one of those old mustachers, like one of those hipster mustachers.
Jack, did you hear that his
great.
daughter is carrying? She's following in her father's charlatan footsteps.
You failed miserably to prove that Jordan Peterson is a charlatan for months straight. So you can quit poking your chest out now.
Do you think Michaela is a charlatan?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Silence.
Maybe, but maybe. I mean, I'm just not sure. I'm not going to take a solid
blatantly
position.
obvious.
Yeah, it's blatant.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm not surprised to hear that from you guys. Just like it was obvious Jordan Peterson was a charlatan too, huh?
Here, I'll
Bunch
tell
of
you
cookie
what.
Jordan Peterson's on the diet, John.
You guys are so dishonest that you're never to be taken serious.
Tell you what, do your own research, which you won't, but if you do, you can come back and we can have the talk.
It's interesting that the vegans would say that you're being inconsistent if all of the morally relevant properties are the same, but it's just like what determines whether something is a morally relevant property, because obviously in each individual circumstance they're not going to be identical, obviously not identical beings, like you are not identical to an animal, whatever, so it's just going to be completely arbitrary what they deem to be morally relevant properties. I mean, it could be a morally relevant property.
What do you mean
that
it's completely arbitrary?
That this animal is in this spatial location or
Relative.
whatever,
No, but the point is, right, I think what Josh is saying, which is what I was saying to Vic and Joe earlier, is that they presumably they grant that there is a distinction between a dog, between a human being and a pig, right? Like they would say one is a pig and one is a human being, right? So something makes that the case, right? Why can't that be the morally relevant property? That's what you're saying, right, Josh?
Yeah. Whatever they think are
more. I tried to say that to him, but I mean, I think with that guy, Avi, I probably could have gotten him to accept that. But with Ask Yourself, there's he won't let you press a point. It's just insane.
That's why I was banned the first.
Yeah, I don't think.
No, what they need to do is they need to go through one of his videos, right? Like as a propaganda piece, but they need to play it at like 4 times speed. And then they need to have 2 timers in the bottom. And one is the Ask Yourself stopwatch and one is their locator stopwatch. Time Ask Yourself speaks, hit his stopwatch and see how much time he takes. And then just go through the video and see, like, he spoke 5 or 6 times more than, Jack or whoever. Just sick.
I think that that's the reason that I try to get them to just sort of accept very minor things, and then eventually I get them to say, "See, well, generally I accept those very same things." So it's more. I basically try to make it more like the case where they like chocolate ice cream and I dislike chocolate ice cream, because I think that's a little bit I think it's a little bit more analogous. And so I try to explain that, like, oh, well, you do things for convenience. You think it's permissible to do things for convenience. You might even think it's permissible to kill somebody under certain circumstances under
And eat 'em.
convenience. That's not like
Don't
you have a
eat 'em.
principle. It's more just like you and I disagree where to draw the line.
I talked to Avi about some kind of like what we were talking about, but about we could recognize the difference between a cow and a human, right? And we would know that there's something that makes that the case. And I tried to argue that you don't even have to actually know an essential property, other than, or to be able to distinguish the two, to know that they are distinct. But I wonder if that's actually, if you could actually make that case, right? Like, do I actually have to know what makes a cow or a human to know that they're distinct?
I think you could possibly say just have it. You're just going on your
Well, I
intuition.
mean, I feel like if they find that agreeable, then that there is a distinction in the first place.
Yeah,
The
they're
funny thing is, if you just said, like, if you were just blatantly speciesist, they wouldn't have a response. It would be funny because, like, in the other cases, they say, well, like, oh, if a human was stupid, could you kill it? Because you say animals are fucking dumb, but if you just said because it's a cow, and they say, oh, well, if a human was a cow, would it be permissible to kill? You just say, yeah, I
That's
think
what
it's okay to kill cows.
Oh, that's what Vic does.
That's what Vic does. Yeah, he
goes
just
in and he says, they ask him if he would eat a cow, and he says yes. And then they ask him if he would eat a human, and he says no. And they say, why would he eat a cow, but not eat a human? And he said, well, because one is a cow and the other is a human, right? And then the other thing that he says, which is just hilarious, is that humans have the don't eat them property, as do some dogs.
Yeah, actually gave that argument to Avi 2 days ago, and he said, "Oh, you named the trait," and that was the end of the conversation.
He seems to be confused as to why that. I mean, he doesn't seem to really understand why that should be a problem for him.
Trait is that we don't eat them.
You shouldn't eat them.
Yeah, that they have the not eat property.
That you shouldn't eat property.
So that's such a weak argument to get past name the trait. I mean, if
How's it
even
weak?
that can get past it,
But I think they admitted they didn't really have an argument, right?
that's not Oh
Right?
well,
They're just trying to be persuasive.
I think ask yourself. Well, I don't know if they did have like a 12 premise argument or like a 2-part. One of them's like 12 premises, bit like that. Big bungled mess.
Yeah, no. Ask yourself if he has an argument. Like he frames it as if it's an argument. It's not just merely like a persuasionary technique. He thinks it's like a logical argument.
Well, no. Ask yourself in his conversation with Angstrike pointed out that the name the trait argument is not actually an argument, but it's a filtering procedure to filter worldviews into two positions: one, consistent but horrible by their standards, or two, inconsistent.
Okay, fantastic. So he admitted it isn't an argument. So why did we have a discussion that he posted
So
to his
it's
channel?
it's not an argument. It's a filtering procedure.
Yeah, great. So why did we have a whole discussion on the validity of name the trait if he doesn't
Why
think
not?
it's
Are you well versed in name the trait, Ace?
No. I just listened to the discussion that Jack had with Ask Yourself. I
that's
think
fine.
Jack actually
the
did
guy,
pretty
the guy
good.
thinks it's an
but
argument.
I
He's
think
thinks
One at a time, please.
Yeah, I think Jack did actually really well. I think that to Ask Yourself apparently doesn't know much about meta ethics. I think if Jack focused more on just ethics in general and trying to poke holes in Ask Yourself's ethics, it probably would have gone better. But I mean, obviously the meta ethical arguments that Jack was putting forth.
By go better, you mean he would have been overtalked twice as much.
Exactly. Yes.
Chum is correct here.
I'd fuck.
It's okay, bud.
That's how it is in Itch of a.
Yeah, it was pretty clear that Ask Yourself was out of his depth with that stuff. I mean,
Is there anyone
And
who's
then-
like familiar with the name the trait argument? Because I wanted to ask someone something about
Josh is familiar.
it's a simple argument. Just asking what trait of animals distinguishes them from humans in such that it makes them proper for consumption.
So I'm just wondering if it entails, if you take the name the trait argument to be a good argument, right? Does that mean like you're obliged to consider animals as like valuable as people, or like as morally considered as people, right?
Socrates, listen, these idiots don't know what they're talking about. They're still caught up in the idea they're wrecking the vegans, right? They're fucking morons.
No, I'm just trying to explore
But,
the idea. Like with the name the trait, like are you obliged to consider animals as people, right? The way humans are considered people.
Yeah, unless you can name
Socrates, look at it this way, right? Don't listen to these idiots. Most like it's you ever heard of it? People
Stop
comparing
talking.
this to the
Stop John John from talking, please.
moral
Yeah, John.
consistency check, for example.
Could you let
Like
the grown-up
Josh,
speak,
all
please?
you guys are just butt touchers who are always going to claim victory against the vegans. You have nothing to offer here. Just a bunch of bias.
I just want to talk about the
Stop,
argument.
You don't know. Just
But,
John John. Come on,
so
someone's trying to learn something. You're just getting in the way of someone learning
You're
something. Stop.
misrepresenting the vegans, Josh.
John
What
John,
don't
you
you
don't even know what I
understand
was
about
going to
that?
say.
What part of you're an
You-
idiot for
I'm
claiming
sorry
you
for
have a
asking.
fear
You know what?
against
I
the
take back my question. Don't worry
Go
about it.
ahead. A
That's fine,
productive conversation.
Okay. So what they say, Socrates, is that there are properties that confer rights, and so humans have a set of properties that confer more rights than what animals have. So they think that if animals had these certain properties, like maybe the language or knew anything about politics or something, then they would have the right to vote the way humans have the right to vote or things like that.
Can
But
I
since
actually make a clarification though? Because the trait isn't even like exclusive to the properties of like an individual animal. It can be actually even a product of like a consequence of their existence. So like trait encompasses like such a wide parameter of things that I feel like it's hard to even have a discussion about what trait is. And I've never actually even gotten a methodological answer to what it actually means to have trait.
It just means property.
Yeah.
None of that matters. Anyway, yeah, so the point is that they don't think that animals should be treated the same as humans simply in virtue of being animals. They think that they have properties which confer rights, and humans have properties which confer rights that animals don't have. But I think it's likely that they also believe that animals don't have properties that confer rights that humans don't have.
Okay, so the point of the name the trait argument is that there's no specific trait such that you can isolate which properties give you rights. Is that it? Because I'm not sure if I understand what they're trying to do.
No, they
There's
think there is a
two,
specific trait, right? They think it's sentience because that's why you can eat rocks or plants, but you can't eat humans or animals.
Okay. So they say animals have sentience?
Yeah.
So does that mean that people or animals are supposed to be considered persons the way humans are considered persons?
No, I actually don't think that that's their argument. Their argument is that they should have the right to life, essentially. That they should have the right to live and die on their own terms.
Do you think that, Josh? Do you think that's the entailment?
That is right, because if you ask them what's the distinguishing trait between plants and animals that makes it okay to eat plants, they'll say sentience.
Well, actually, Vic, it wouldn't be okay to eat rocks.
Yeah, that's
Well, and there's problems with that because certain definitions of sentience would include plants.
Right. Well, yeah.
They
I mean,
think
that's also thinking about.
They think that sentience confers a right to be sort of protected, like not be eaten for pleasure or convenience or things like that. They think that if you're sentient, you have a right not to be eaten for pleasure or convenience.
So it doesn't convey personhood.
Well, that's a
No.
good question. What's the property or the trait such that we can eat plants, and what's the property or trait such that we deserve to eat?
Wait, I thought of something too. So if sentience is the property, then it would be totally okay to eat pea zombies then, because they have no qualia.
Yeah.
The rich.
Oh yeah, and then you give them the
The rich.
Eat the rich.
Oh,
I think
man.
I'm just not
That's
understanding.
good.
I'm having like a problem. I guess
Vic,
this is
shut
my
up.
own failings about.
You tell me to
If,
shut up.
I'm sorry.
Wait, what? No, go. Keep talking.
Oh, what about what differentiates like something with sentience versus like personhood? Does it seem
Intentionality.
intentionality, and animals don't have intentionality.
No.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I think they do, but Jack doesn't, and other people don't.
Yeah, you have to define intentionality.
Pass.
Who has to do that?
Zycron?
They
Okay.
probably
Psychro-
just
no, who has to define it? Who are you telling me that
It's
has to?
it's conscious acts. It's about in this property that you hold about
You,
something.
they know what it's doing. So like let's say like a cow is eating, but it knows that it's, sustaining itself. Does it have intentionality then?
Yeah, if it has knowledge, it does.
It has
I
a
think they
thought
think
of
like
the
this
food
like,
that it's
how,
eating.
okay, how do you measure? Okay, hold on. How do you measure whether or not a
Oh
cow
my
has intention?
god. What the fuck?
Like
It's
how
stealing
is that even full distinction?
It's
Wait, I
stealing
want to
from
hear Josh. Can you
conceptual.
let Josh talk, please?
Yeah,
Jesus
Josh,
Christ.
go ahead,
Fuck.
Josh.
Okay. So I think that even if they thought that it was gradational, they might think that there's just a certain level of cognizance at which you're a person, and I don't think that they would need something like a principled line where they drew, for what was a person and what wasn't. Because like even if you thought that animals had some like suborders of beliefs or something like that, they just think that they don't have a level of cognizance, like they're not aware of themselves or their surroundings or the future or things like that. So I think
So,
that that's the idea.
is it possible to apply the name the trait argument to what defines personhood, like or whatever level of cognizance defines personhood?
I mean, yeah, you could do it with anything if you wanted.
Because I was just wondering about when
Yeah.
Ask Yourself said that the purpose of this was to appeal to our intuitions, but
You
it
can
seems like
say, oh, my bad.
I mean it's fine if you want to know.
I was gonna say you can say that the trait is personhood, but I think the problem with that is that there are some humans that you'd eat under certain circumstances, and they have personhood, right? So it's not personhood that makes it such that you shouldn't eat humans.
Well,
I mean,
I
like,
get,
if they think the issue is sentience, then like if you believed that people weren't sentient when they slept, it would be okay to eat people, right? When they, as long as they're sleeping.
Yeah, so they have to change it to some kind of capacity or some kind of identity condition across time.
I think it's obvious.
well, we take away. I think it seems like personhood is like a social relation. It's like something we agree as an or we have intersubjective agreement on. So I'm trying to like understand how the name the trait or what the name the trait thing entails, right? Because we have people who are fully sentient, but we take away their personhood for a variety of reasons. Like if you're not supposed to kill people, but you can kill in self-defense, it seems like you're de facto removing someone's personhood in the moment of aggression, right? So we have this idea about removing people's personhood conditionally.
What?
I'm just so the idea is like I think that we have these two intuitions on personhood. One is an inalienable property about beings, right? It's just it's a property of people that have personhood. And then there's also this idea of personhood is socially defined.
Like a citizen?
Kinda.
A person
Like,
is a legal term.
yeah.
Someone which is granted rights by the state, protected.
Yeah, I don't think they mean that.
Yeah, I don't. There's a philosophical notion of personhood, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there might be an equivocation when we talk about like rights-based personhood versus just the quality of person.
I don't think we're talking about a legalistic sense of personhood here.
It seems like we are when we're talking about like the right to life. Like persons shouldn't be killed, right? Or they should have bodily autonomy or whatever.
Hmm.
Maybe in some other context, but I mean, unless someone here meant personhood as like citizenship or something.
I mean, animals definitely don't have citizenship, so I don't
Yeah.
know. But I don't think they ever mentioned personhood.
Some animals do
Okay.
actually.
Or like when animals are mayor of a city.
They
some
actually
animals
are. Every mayor of a city is an animal.
Jonathan Livingston Seagull is based on a real seagull who became a member of parliament.
Jack, who do you think's read that in here?
You guys just need to be more specific.
Jack, I think I'm the only one who might have read that in here.
There's a dog that became a mayor. That's the only one I know about.
There's a cat that's a mayor of Alaska, right? The town in Alaska.
Yeah, I'm finally unmuted.
Yeah.
I know more about the vegans than all of you.
Mayor of Los Angeles.
Just
Mayor of Los
garbage.
Angeles is an animal.
You guys are so
I'm
idiots.
free.
You guys are so stupid on the vegan.
The mayor of Los Angeles is an animal. The president of the United States is an animal. What are you guys talking about?
Are you talking about Brumph?
Vic, if you
talking
don't
about
take an
Donald
essentialist view, if you don't take an essentialist view of like something like a human being, is it either that you take a constructivist view or like a family resemblance, or are those those
I don't
those
really
seem
know
to be
what
your
a
other two options, right?
constructionist-
What?
I don't know what a constructionist view is.
Well, that the concept of human, like what makes someone human, is just completely the properties that we say make something human are mind dependent. That's my best guess.
They're mind dependent.
Or relative, right? Kind of like the idea of citizenship, right? Is a constructed notion that we were discussing, right? It doesn't seem like human, being human is constructed in the same sense as being a citizen, right? So it seems like there's three
Human is a
avenues you could
natural
take.
kind?
What?
I mean, human is a natural kind.
Well, I don't know your view. You're taking a non-essentialist view, which either I think has to be a kind of family resemblance or a constructivist view.
Probably family resemblance.
So you're still recognizing certain properties that are essential to humans, right?
No.
Then how are you making this distinction?
What distinction?
Well, I take it that you distinguish humans and cows, right? How do you make that distinction?
I just categorize them separately.
Right. Now, if you do, you might use some criteria, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So that is that criteria kind of like it seems like that criteria that you produce is something like would lend itself to constructivism. If they're not essential properties.
Why?
Well, first of all, we do agree that there are criteria that you're utilizing, right? Now, if those criteria that you're picking out are non-essential, that means those criteria are somewhat arbitrary, or at least relativized to your to what you may find relevant to the category that you're making.
Are you saying something like that? That within, that it's just arbitrary, that like a zebra could fall into the definition of what it's to be a cow or something?
Well, let's just take the easy example of citizens, right? Citizenship, right? We have a constructivist view of citizenship. There's certain criteria that make you a citizen of the United States, right? And so we impose that criteria on certain individuals and either say that they're a citizen or they're not a citizen, right? Now, I wonder if he's doing the same thing in terms of how he distinguishes humans from non-humans, right? And if he is, he has a constructivist view. But if he's not, he either has to have a kind of essentialist view, either a family resemblance or maybe like we were talking.
Family resemblance is like contrasted from essentialism.
Well, but there's still going to be essential properties, right? They're just not going to be uniform across what you're the category, right?
they're going to be essential properties, but that some humans don't have.
Yeah, it does make sense, Danny.
Okay, but I take it that there are going to be a set of properties in which are exhibited in humans, right? That's what a family resemblance means.
The idea is that like catch is a game, even though there's no winner, right? So there are some games where people win, some where where there's no winners or losers, right? And then you can and so catch will share properties with some other games that won't be shared with Monopoly, right? And so you'll have like this whole network of overlapping things that we all call games, right? But there's
Isn't
no
that the
common
family
property.
resemblance?
Yeah, but there's no common property that's shared by all of them.
Yeah, but it seems like that, like catch is a constructivist notion, right?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, the little I've read, right? I took to I thought that last time we talked, we discussed that the opposing view to essentialism is family resemblance, right? And then
Well,
I read
that's one opposing view.
Okay,
But
so
that's an example of an anti-essentialist view.
so where did those I guess I'm asking is to the origin of the properties that we usually attribute to the catch, right? That we typically see, but not necessarily see in the game of catch.
Wait, but the idea is that catch is a game, right? And so the idea is what's a game? If catch is a game and Monopoly is a game, and
Jack, can I try?
yeah, go ahead.
I knew family resemblance concepts when I was sorting my porn folders, right? So I have like an interracial porn folder, and I usually like stick the interracial porn in there. And then like there's this girl that's in some of them, and she has like red hair. She's not in all of them, some of them, and she's kind of hot. And then like I noticed that there's like another Russian chick. Well, she doesn't do interracial porn, but she does kind of look like the chick inside the one that does the interracial porn, in some of the interracial porn. So like I figured like the best way to sort it for me, for my ease, is because they bear resemblance in that sense. And so I just stuck it in the interracial folder. But like they're not everything in the interracial folder is of that redhead girl, right? And not everything of the other redhead girl is interracial or anything like that. So they don't share anything that's common amongst them. But I just felt as if it was best to stick it there. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that girl in the folder because she's related to a girl that's the direct topic name of the folder.
What?
So like more, are you saying it's more of like extended family resemblance?
Now, as much as it pains me to say this, I think that John is probably correct although he doesn't know why, he's probably correct about.
Oh, I'm always correct. Trust me. I just got unmuted so I can shit on all you faggot anti-vegans.
Okay.
John, you gotta go. I'm a
Buckle up,
weekend-
boys. You
Well,
can't, you can't turn this place into an anti-vegan echo chamber as long as I'm around.
It's called the Carnus Corner. Fuck.
So what?
Wait,
what
is
I
John
think-
John a vegan now?
No. Irrational.
Anyway, so as I was saying, what I think John is correct about is actually the inevitability of hierarchies. I was reading a really excellent paper. I guess I should post it. Called "On the Evolutionary Origin of Hierarchies," and they did an analysis of complex networks, and they found that when connection costs are included in network evolution, that hierarchies naturally emerge. And the reason why hierarchies naturally emerge when given connection costs is that the argument is that any problem can be solved by recursively subdividing the problem into modules, solving each module, and then composing the modules together in a hierarchy. And if you have no connection costs, then you don't necessarily, that's not necessarily the case. You can solve it by just a single layer of fully connected nodes in a network. But that's infeasible in the real world, because any either neural connection or any connection between, say, departments in a government, any kind of network where there's nodes, there's going to be a cost for each connection made between each of the nodes. And so this is a realistic assumption, and under this realistic assumption, hierarchies necessarily emerge because, like I said, this whole recursive subdivision of problems that is neatly solved by hierarchical structure. So I feel like I'm giving John ammunition here, but like I said, I think there's actually quite a bit of.
How is any of that relevant to like? And
That's all right, Ace. I muted John John.
why is that a
But
contradiction?
That's definitely going to be an atomic bomb and John personal stuff. Shouldn't have.
What did he say?
An atomic bomb in John's arsenal. Well, here the
Look, I
PDF
mean,
uploading.
like
So
you take the 4 tenets of communism, where you say it's like, classless, moneyless, stateless, with the means of production owned by the people. And why is this
Moneyless,
hierarchy
yeah.
thing that what you're talking about, like some sort of contradiction in those tenets?
because
Why is it
if you had a flat hierarchy, it's extremely inefficient because a flat hierarchy necessitates that each
Well,
node
inefficient
communicate
doesn't
with
mean
every other node.
compatible. Inefficiency doesn't mean
that-
incoherent.
Well, wait. So what that causes is a factorial explosion of network connections. If you have a fully connected flat hierarchy. Now you could argue that it doesn't necessarily need to be fully connected. That you could have multiple hops between nodes, but that in itself causes inefficiencies. And so, like I said, given connection costs, the most efficient structure is always going to be a multi-tiered hierarchical structure where information flows up and down the hierarchy.
So you're saying when we talk about social hierarchies, it's best modeled by information graph, right?
Yeah, I posted the PDF in main chat if anybody's interested in reading it. Just so full disclosure.
Okay. Also,
But,
how do you define efficiency?
There's multiple ways. So in a network, you could say that a network is efficient if it arrives to a solution in less iterations and that it requires less computational resources to reach that solution. You could also say, and there's also this distinction between efficiency and effectiveness. You can say that a network is effective if it is able to solve problems that are similar but not exactly like the problems it had been exposed to before.
I don't understand why this is some sort of defeater.
What do you mean?
I don't see how a hierarchy existing is incompatible with what I stated as communism.
Well, you would have the that's just socialism.
Are you saying
right?
that
if you have a
classless-
dictatorship of the
Are you
proletariat?
saying that classless and hierarchy are in conflict?
Yeah,
Why?
because like I said, that would be socialism, where you have a dictatorship of the proletariat.